When it was first dug up, scientists thought they had discovered the ancestor of a cartoon mascot, but it turns out this thing is 50 million years older than the dinosaurs. It was the true first-generation overlord of planet Earth, yet nobody seems to care about him. Why? Because he looks absolutely ridiculous. Imagine a 20-foot-long body with a head the exact size of a football and a belly as round as a wine barrel. At first glance, it looks like a prehistoric joke. The scientific community was pretty much silent for years. Nobody wanted to study it seriously, that is, until someone realized that this stupid beast lived in the Permian period, an era where even oxygen levels were dangerously unstable. Not only did it survive in that hellscape for tens of millions of years, but it also became the first creature in Earth's history to become a multi-ton terrestrial king. Simply by eating plants, you might laugh at its tiny brain, but its evolutionary lineage has carried all the way to today, passing right down to you and me. So don't laugh at him for looking goofy. You carry his shadow in your blood. Its real scientific name is Cotylorhynchus. The name literally means cup snout. Just hearing the name might not impress you, but if you saw its skull face to face, you would freeze in your tracks. Those two outer nostrils are ridiculously massive. They stretch open on its face like two hollowed out cups, taking up nearly 1/3 of its entire skull. When scientists first studied this skull, they were left speechless for a long time. Not because they were shocked by its ferocity, but because they genuinely could not understand how this tiny head and that massive body evolved to fit together. Cotylorhynchus belongs to the clade Synapsida, specifically the family Caesidae. It lived about 280 to 265 million years ago. During the early to mid-Permian period, today its fossil excavation sites are heavily focused in the United States, specifically Oklahoma and Texas. Currently, there are 3 known species, Hancocki, Romeri, and Bransoni now. Here is the absolute key point. A lot of people get this confused. Cotylorhynchus is not a dinosaur, and it is not a reptile. The synapsid group to which it belongs shares the exact same evolutionary foundation as modern mammals. Compared to the diapsid group that birthed the dinosaurs, this creature is actually much closer on the evolutionary tree to us humans. The largest species, Cotylorhynchus hancocki, could reach over 20 feet in length and weighed up to 2 tons. What does that mean? It means at the time it lived, Cotylorhynchus was the largest terrestrial vertebrate on Earth. It had absolutely no rivals. Think about it. The apex predator of that era was the famous Dimetrodon, you know, the one with the massive sail on its back, and highly specialized teeth that could shatter bone. But even the largest Dimetrodon was only about 10 feet long. That means in front of Cotylorhynchus, the most ferocious hunter of the Permian was only half that size. It's not that Dimetrodon didn't want to hunt it, but when a 2-ton behemoth is standing right in front of you, any predator has to weigh the risks. Take one bite, and you might just get crushed to death first. This was the ultimate defense mechanism of Cotylorhynchus. Not fangs, not claws, just sheer unadulterated mass that no natural enemy dared to provoke. The proportions of its skull compared to its body are so mismatched it's almost impressive. A 20-foot body guided by a head the size of a football, scientists have specifically highlighted its brain volume in paleontological discussions. The sheer disparity between its tiny brain and massive body rivals that of the famous Stegosaurus or the giant long-necked sauropods, but having a small brain is actually a heavily misunderstood evolutionary advantage. Because in the harsh environment of the Permian, you didn't need to be smart, you just needed to eat, digest, and stay alive. And Cotylorhynchus pushed these 3 things to the absolute limit. Permian plant life was tough. Most of it was incredibly hard, cellulose-rich vegetation that most animals simply could not digest. But Cotylorhynchus evolved a revolutionary digestive system. When scientists studied its ribcage, they realized that swollen, barrel-like belly housed an unusually massive intestinal tract. This super long gut acted like a slow fermentation tank. It could break down tough, low-nutrient vegetation that other animals considered worthless waste. Inside that belly, plant matter slowly turned into the massive energy needed to fuel a 2-ton body. In modern terms, its abdomen was a giant walking fermentation factory. This also explains its bizarre anatomy, those massive, powerful forelimbs with thick claws. Scientists speculate they were used to dig up underground roots and tubers, just like a modern wild boar sniffing out truffles. Cotylorhynchus used those ridiculously large nostrils to lock onto the scent of underground food. Then, it used its massive claws to rip up the earth and feast. So, how did the Caesidae family end? They weren't suddenly wiped out by a dramatic doomsday asteroid. They were simply outcompeted. By the middle to late Permian, a new, more advanced group of synapsids emerged, the therapsids. These new creatures had more flexible bodies, higher metabolic rates, and adapted to the changing environment much faster than the slow, fermenting machines like Cotylorhynchus. The Caesidae populations slowly shrank. They coexisted with these new advanced synapsids for a while, but eventually they quietly disappeared. No vigorous fight, no doomsday frenzy. They were just gradually washed away in the relentless torrent of evolution. But the broader synapsid family? They survived, they endured that long evolutionary competition, they got smaller, faster, and their physiology began to fundamentally change, one of the most mind-blowing changes. 3 bones in their lower jaw, originally used for biting and chewing, slowly migrated deep into the skull as evolution progressed. Eventually, they shrank and turned into the 3 tiny bones of the mammalian inner ear, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. This process was preserved perfectly in the fossil record. It remains one of the most profound pieces of evolutionary evidence in the history of paleontology. And that evolutionary road ends with mammals. It led to today's dogs, cats, whales, and you sitting in front of a screen watching this video right now. Cotylorhynchus might not be your direct ancestor, but it and your ancestors stood at the exact same ancient starting point. In this long river of evolution stretching back 300 million years, some might laugh at it for looking stupid, but it used a 20 million year survival record to tell the world one thing. On the chessboard of evolution, surviving the longest is the only real victory. It didn't need to be smart. It didn't need to be ferocious, it just needed to drop that tiny little head, take bite after bite, fill that massive belly, and outlive every single opponent who ever laughed at it. Earth's first true terrestrial giant, the Cotylorhynchus. 300 million years later, someone is finally taking it seriously. Evolution isn't about being the smartest, just surviving the longest. What forgotten monster should we uncover next? Let me know below. Hit like and subscribe to Dr. Globe.